Hello, everyone, and welcome to What I Learned the Hard Way. Today, our guest is David Young, who is an entrepreneur and an innovator in the alternative fund industry for over 30 years. Welcome, David.
Good morning, Judith. It's great to be able to speak with you again.
So, David, I will put the question to you. In your career, and you've had a very substantial career, worked with a lot of different clients and funds and people in the industry. What have you learned the hard way?
It's an interesting question to ask because I think I've kind of built a business around what I've learned, and that's transparency and the importance of transparency. Specifically, I work in an industry. I mean that has, from a reporting perspective, it normally has some significant delays, and delays of delivering information, can have negative impact on those that you're delivering the information to. Specifically, I've developed a business that is focused on transparency of, making sure that we're driving information to the in this case, investors in hedge funds and alternative products, as quickly as possible on a daily basis, near real time. But when I look at myself professionally, and while it can be hard to admit at times, I realize that, that was something that I've always struggled with. And specifically, I would make the joke at times that, good news is delivered in real time. I mean, it's the electronic age. Bad news is normally delivered, via Pony Express. I mean, it takes a long time.
So how did you, once you kind of recognized that this was something that clearly perhaps did not go the right way in a few situations, how did you break the cycle?
Feeling uncomfortable and making decisions when I'm uncomfortable. And, I think, not to get into my own, personal psychology, but, I think a lot of it is you just don't want to disappoint people. You don't want to be the person who's delivering, the negative information or bad news, but it's important to, and to deliver it immediately. And, it has ramifications that go, well beyond most of the time your own thought process. And while you could look at it and think, if I go and report this information, someone is going to be upset or think less of me. They actually, and I've been on both ends of this, you appreciate it more because you're getting the information quickly. That that's a person you can trust, that, that there's, a solid foundation of communication between you, that, whatever the circumstances are, you're going to know what's going on. And I think that's, critical.
So give some specific, examples where, because sometimes when people are listening, there are different points in their career. So I guess, give some examples when you're maybe right size the kind of the gift that you're giving, which is figure out how to be more proactive and transparent. If you were talking to somebody perhaps at the beginning of their career, because I think when you're more mature, you have frequent conversations with clients, you're in board meetings, you're in status update meetings. When you're in the beginning of your career, I think you're trying to navigate when and how and all that from a communications perspective. How would you give this advice to somebody starting their career?
Well, and understood. And I think, you can look at it and think that, well, I don't want to be a tattletale, or I don't want to be the person, who's, speaking out of turn and not being a team player. Yeah. But you have to understand what your team is. The team is not the individual who sits with you. The team is the company that pays you, and that information for the team at the top is critical. So examples, it could be an unsatisfied client. It could be somebody, that's unhappy, and, and maybe, you should be reporting that very quickly. Maybe it's, in my example, at times it can be financial information. I mean, just, We incurred an expense we didn't expect. We, had, slippage of revenue in some place, and making sure that, you're bringing that information up into the forefront immediately, that people are aware of it. Because again, I think it's commonplace for people to assume, while everyone tells you assume the worst, most people assume the best. They just think if they don't hear everything, everything's fine. If they hear nothing, there's nothing to worry about. That's not always the case. So there can be little things that, at whatever level company you're at, that can come across your desktop. And again, it's not that you're deviating from the idea of team and the construct of, of a teammate and how you work with them. It's, knowing that the most important thing is the kind of the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back.
What I appreciate about what you're saying is I had to learn some phrases to use. First of all, sometimes via email versus in person, because a drive-by, you're interrupting somebody. If you're trying to do a drive-by to your boss, kind of putting this on your radar. But you're right, there's an element of preparedness for your team that, at least if it's on the radar of your boss or whomever, they may, recalibrate something, being sensitive to it, that really helps mitigate something really, bigger, right? Because when you have time, you can make adjustments. Ironically, I was a flight attendant at the beginning of my career, and they used to say, you either have a planned evacuation or an unplanned evacuation, which sounds kind of like crazy, but at least with a planned evacuation, you do have some steps that you can take for, waiting for the inevitable.
Yeah, no.
So
Exactly. But thinking about it, the unplanned evacuation probably is a little less stressful in the time up
right,
until the evacuation.
because it happens, right? So I guess, again, for someone that's, younger, I think also, when I listen to you, there are times in a meeting where you don't feel like it's important for you to have commentary, but, you might, I've sent text messages to my boss on meetings, just kind of making them aware of something, so that I'm not, because you don't know when you're junior, when you should provide commentary, right? And so if that's for your boss to provide the commentary, at least you're communicating, and that can be, a pattern that you develop with your boss as you learn to navigate managing your boss. So
I think that's right, Judith. And, but that also, comes down to communication and open communication up front, finding out from your boss how they want to be communicated with.
yeah,
Do they care about the little things? The idea that, well, it's just something little, it may not matter. Sometimes you shouldn't be, the one determining that may be at a higher level, a decision that, is up to, up the ladder from you a little bit. But, speaking, with your boss, what's the best way to communicate? Do you mind if I send you a text? Do you? And some people may. I mean, I've worked with people in the past who, even though we're working in a financial industry and things are changing literally around the clock, because there are markets that trade around the clock, they, will say, don't bother me after 6 or before 6.
yeah. Well,
okay,
and
at least
that
we
is
know
one
what
of
the
those
ground
things
rules
that,
are.
to your point, if you don't proactively ask, you end up finding out the hard way, because it goes down. Well, David, this has been really illuminating, and I really appreciate your time and sharing your story and your insights, and really great having you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much, Judith. And as always, it's great to speak with you.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.